Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Michi Makes Up. Today I'm going to combine two requested videos into one. I think it's just perfect because there's just enough content to fit two into like a good length video. The first request is using the NARS Climax palette, which they released for the fall. This is a fairly new palette. I'm going to create a look focusing on the pinky-like shades from this color story. So it'll be these three shades here, and I will probably use this to kind of round out the look, blend out seams, just to make everything more blended. And I might use a little bit of this shade as well. So I'll get to that first. And then for the second half of the video, we're going to take a look at some of my go-to face powders. I'm not talking about setting powder because if you guys have looked at my video descriptions for the past, I don't know, 4 months, like any video description, you would see that I have consistently listed this Milk setting powder as what I have on my face. And this is a setting powder I use to set my makeup every single time that I do put on makeup. So we won't be talking about this, but rather we're going to talk about, you know, some of the well-known, coveted powders or popular powders amongst beauty enthusiasts and collectors. So I have here the SUQQU blurring powder. This is the Perfect Blur finishing powder, and it is in this hummingbird packaging or compact. This is limited edition, was available last year. You can still get this blurring powder, but in a new compact, and frankly the new one's really cool. I think it's called Flower Power, and it has like 3D roses that are just stuck on the compact. It looks really cool. I will have a link below. I'll have a link below for all of these so you guys can go and have a look. But the product is the same, and I do think they brought it back because it's so popular. The other powder we're going to look at is Dior's Powder No Powder. This powder can be used as a setting powder or a finishing powder. So I think this is a really cool product. I had my reservations when I first got this to do a test. If you're interested in seeing the test, I'll also have a link below for you guys to go take a look. But I had my reservations because it is shimmery, and it does give you radiance with that shimmer. So I thought with combo skin, I'm gonna be really oily as a result of it. But this powder actually has oil control in it. We'll talk more about it when we get to it. And then we're also going to look at the Guerlain Meteorites. I have here Pearl Glow, which is a limited edition. You might still be able to get Pearl Glow, but this is the only meteorites that I have still in my collection. But this is really just supposed to represent Guerlain meteorites in general and the kind of finish it's supposed to give you. So the meteorites are a finishing powder. I do not use it as a setting powder. I need something more mattifying for setting powders. And when it comes to setting powders or powders, face powders in general, how could we leave out the Hourglass ambient powders? What I have here is, this is their Sculpture palette released last year. We're going to take a look at the two finishing powders. And typically how I use it is I just mix the two and kind of apply it all over the face. So we'll take a look at this. And finally, we'll also take a look at SUQQU's Pure Color Blush. So as the name implies, the blush is not a setting powder, finishing powder, but I find that the radiance and the blurring effect the blushes give is quite similar to the ambient powders from Hourglass. So that's why I took this out too, to take a look. Let's start with the eye look, and I'm first going to go into this shade here and put that all over the lids. And then I'm taking this shade and placing that on the, just above the lash line, and then blending it towards the center of the lid. Then I'm actually going to go into this shade here. I'm going to mix these two because I don't want to just use the shade and make it too deep. I'm going to add that to the outer V and then blend upwards into the crease just to deepen this part of the lid a bit more so there's more dimension. Then I'm going back into this shade here and I'm just going to smooth out any seams because I do want to soften up. Like I don't want the deep shade here to create too much of a contrast. I just want it to be kind of soft, kind of like a gradient. And then using a finger, I'm going into this shade here, super bright. And I'm applying that onto the center of the lid. So I just have a very classic halo eye look. I'm going to put on some mascara, then we'll come back to put some foundation on, then we'll get to the face powders. And I thought of something else while I was applying mascara. I want to go back to this shade here, and I'm going to mix it with this. Again, not too deep. I'm just going to add that right here. Just to give this area more depth. And you could do this if you have hooded eyes or if you don't have hooded eyes. Either way, it's just gonna help you and give you more dimension if you want that. So I think this looks a bit more, like I look less washed out because I added quite a bit of that really shimmery shade onto the center of the lid. And I think this looks more balanced. Okay, so I've set the foundation with the milk powder, and this is matte. It blurs, it mattifies, it helps with oil control. So I've used the powder to set everything so that we can, you know, swatch and add the other powders on kind of on the same like level base. And why don't we go ahead to do swatches. So first I have here the Dior Powder No Powder, and this is in the shade 1N. So you can see I have quite a bit of product here. And while it's subtle, you can see that sheen reflecting the light. Then let's get into the Chantecaille blurring powder. So it's completely matte, no sheen. But you can see that this powder gives you a radiance, even though it's matte. Then we have the Hourglass finishing powders. So I'm just going to do that, mix the two. Then we have the Guerlain Meteorites. There's not a sophisticated way of doing this, but just, if you will bear with me, we'll use a brush to apply it on the skin later. Oh. And the meteorites are easy to sweep away. And then for the SUQQU blush here, so you can see it has that reflective quality, the radiance to it. Looking at it like this, I would say the meteorites are the most glittery. It has the most like micro glitter in the finish. followed by a hint of that kind of glittery specks and shininess, if you will, by the SUQQU blush. After that, it's gonna be probably a tie between the Ambient Powder Sheen and the Dior Powder No Powder. And then finally, Chantecaille is kind of on its own because it's completely matte. We're first going to take the Chantecaille blurring powder and apply it to just the right side of the cheek. I'm going to use Sonia G's Smooth Buffer to do that. And so that is one application. And I hope it's not too subtle, but you can see compared to this side, well, it's actually a bit more mattified now than this side, but it's also just smoother. I'm going to apply a second application. And then I'm just going to do a third application just to cover the whole area of the side. And the most impressive, like, personal story that I have with this product is I took this with me to a road trip last year. In the middle of summer, triple digits, really hot. I live in the South, so it's super hot. And we were walking a lot. We were at a winery for one of those days. And I just remember when we go from one building to the next, you would sweat because it's just, that's how hot it was. And I remember at the end of the day, when we were back at the hotel, and I was like looking at the makeup, it was very much intact. Now, a lot of oils have come through, there was sweat, but nothing was lifted. And I contribute to the long staying power of my makeup that day to the foundation, yes, for sure, but also to this setting powder. Because of that mattifying effect, I think it helped control oil a little bit more than it would have if I just, relied on my setting powder. And also the foundation, again, played a huge part in it as well. So I am all about this powder for blurring. If you are looking for a finishing powder, but you don't like the micro glitters, you don't want anything with a sheen, which is understandable. Some days you don't want to shine. Like if you have oily skin especially, you're probably really cautious about what kind of finishing powders you would want to have on, because you're taking that extra step to put another layer of makeup. Like you want that to last throughout the day. So this is my recommendation. This is my favorite matte finishing powder that I've come across. I've also used this as a setting powder, and I would say it can be used as a setting powder, but for me, again, combo skin, I would prefer to have a loose setting powder and then to top it with this. Next, we have the Dior Powder No Powder. I'm going to clean off the Smooth Buffer, and we're going to go back into here, and I'm going to apply it onto the left side of my face. Second application. And let's do a third. Chantecaille and Dior. And I don't know if you can see on camera, but as I turn, there's more reflective quality here. Everything looks smoother, but the light is reflected more than this side. And when I look at it from my vanity mirror just below the camera, I feel like this side looks a bit smoother, and I wonder if that has to do with the way the light hits it or how it reflects back, because as it reflects back, everything, it looks more even as a result. So what's amazing about the Powder No Powder, I've used it several times, is that it's long lasting, even though it gives you a sheen, a radiance, but it also works as a setting powder. I've used it as a setting powder, and to my surprise, it doesn't really add to my oiliness at the end of the day. And I've used it as a finishing powder, which is just as great. I think when I do the loose mattifying powder and I add this on top, it gives me again, like the SUQQU blurring powder, it gives that added mattifying control or oil control. So this is a great product if you're looking for just a little bit of radiance. That can be a bit versatile, where you can use it as a finishing powder or a setting powder. Now the difference between these two, other than one is matte and the other has some shine, some radiance to it, is the scent. If it bothers you to have a scent in your makeup, or something that you put all over your face to have a scent, then the SUQQU one has no scent, which I think is great. The scent does dissipate, but let's just say I'm getting ready and I'm gonna go out. By the time I'm in the car and we've gone like a mile, I can still smell this a little bit, like if I move especially. So if that bothers you, just so you know, there is a scent. It's not offensive, it's not particularly strong, but it's definitely there. And then as the evening goes on, or as the day goes on, then it really does dissipate. So just something to be aware of. Moving on next to the Hourglass Ambient Finishing Powders. Again, using a cleaned off smooth buffer, I'm going into these two. And by the way, these two products or powders are called Finishing Powder Dim Light and Finishing Powder Diffused Light. So this is dim light, this is diffused light. I could not really tell you the difference between these two, like at least from looking at it and how the two function. The shades are different, but they're so light it's not that noticeable. So I'm going to apply this onto my forehead. And this is with the powders applied, and I would say while the Dior powder and the SUQQU, they do have some pigment. I think they're the most skin-like match for me. But the Hourglass powders, the two mix, it's quite cool. And if I add too many layers, it almost gives me a cast. And that is actually what I see most noticeable when I look in my vanity mirror. Like you can see almost just this looking like there's a cast versus the really natural finish. By the way, it all feels really smooth. I just wanted to note that. It feels really, really smooth. This does feel heavier though with the Hourglass, like 3 applications just like the rest, but this definitely feels more like I have more product on than either side of the face. And the way that I use these finishing powders is just as that, just finishing powder. I've tried it as setting powder and it doesn't work. About 3-4 hours in, I can see the oil coming through my skin, just like, you know, little bubbles. It's kind of gross, but I can see it coming through. So I know that it does not work for me with combo skin as a setting powder. Maybe if dry skin. If you have dry skin, it might work. But if you have dry skin, I feel like the Dior powder is going to be more hydrating, and even the SUQQU blurring powder as well. So that's how I, you know, kind of categorize all these powders. Hourglass ambient powders, definitely just finishing powders for me. Moving on to now Hourglass here. I'm going to actually first use the smooth buffer, and I'm going to just do that. And I'm going to apply it just on the cheek here so you can see the radiance, because this side of the face, I've used the SUQQU powder, which is matte. It's not gonna, you know, there's no radiance that's gonna interfere, unlike my forehead and this side of the face, the left side. So that is with the meteorites. And then I'm curious what it's like, if you can use this as somewhat as a highlighter even. And I'm going to put that on the tip of my nose. And I'm also going to, again, go back to the high points of the cheek and see what it's like to add this in concentration. So I would say, yes, you can use the meteorites as a highlighter because, you know, out of all these swatches here, this one is the most sparkly. And on the tip of the nose, like in concentration, it could be used as a highlighter. The way that I prefer to use the meteorites is either, you know, as a highlighter, potentially. If I use it all over the face, it's gonna be strictly as a finishing powder, and I'm gonna go light-handed because as my oils come through, you know, 5-6 hours into the day, having something pretty glittery like the meteorites is just going to add to the shininess overall. While it doesn't make me super oily, it does not have the same level of oil control that these two do. So it is a, you know, light-handed finishing powder or a highlight for me. And the other thing about the meteorites is that they are scented. I think most of Guerlain's makeup is scented. And it is quite powdery. So as I go in with the brush, I can just see the powders coming up. I don't know if that bothers you guys, but at times I'm like, I don't want to breathe this all in. I mean, you're going to breathe it in anyway when you put it up close to your face, but I kind of have a pet peeve about that. So that's the other thing to take note of. Finally, our last product is the SUQQU Pure Color Blush. And I'm going to put the product on the side of my face because we don't have any highlight. And I've just gone in to mix these two. I think the powder that really adds the radiance is going to be right here. And actually, I did not swatch only this, so let me do that. You can really see it. So that's what adds or gives the whole product its radiance when you mix these two. So here is with the SUQQU blush added. And in summary, the way that I think of these products is this is not very travel friendly, but it's just so pretty, the compact, like especially if you collect the meteorites and just have these all, you know, lined up on your vanity or your drawer. It's so pretty to look at. In itself, it's kind of an experience to be able to collect these, look at it, you know, keep this even if the product, the meteorites expire, you can still certainly keep this and reuse it. But for like say traveling, ease of use, it's gonna be a toss-up between these two. This one has more flexibility and the oil control, but this is like your good kind of just no frills, but still gives you radiance, tried and true. You know, unscented. It just kind of fits the bill for simple and effective, but still very elegant. So I really like this. And I would actually prefer to take the SUQQU Pure Color Blush with me to give me like a radiant blush look. And if I wanted maybe like an all over face radiance, like somehow I'm like, oh, I really wanted to do that, but I don't, you know, I didn't bring anything else with me that could give me that. Depending on the blush shade, I might be able to just tap into this side here and kind of add to certain points of my face to give me that effect. The Hourglass palette too is still good because you get blushes, highlight, a bronzer, you know, if your skin tone fits within this, but that's another topic, another discussion. So I definitely see some value and good uses for this. I do not think that the finishing powders, while good, I don't find them particularly strong compared to the other powders we've looked at today. However, combined in a palette like this, it would be an easy travel choice too. It's almost like I don't know what to pick. There's many things. I'm gonna take one of these with me. So that's how I think of these finishing powders in my collection. I would love to try the Sisley's Le Phyto face powder. Maybe I got the name wrong, but the Sisley all over blurring powder. I almost got that during one of the many sales this year, but when I tried to check out, it said that where I lived, it was not eligible. Like I was not eligible for that discount. so curious. I wonder like what states they were able to send that to. So I still have my eye on that. Hopefully one of these days I get to try it, add it to my collection. So there you have it. Those are, you know, my kind of go-to face powders. And then also the NARS requested eye look with the kind of pinky shades. Oh, you know what? Before we go, let's add on some lipstick. I almost forgot. This is from SUQQU's Sheer Matte Lipsticks, and in the shade 103. And I figure because I'm so, you know, radiant and shiny from all the products, it's good to contrast it with something a bit more matte. All right, this is the finished look. I love these sheer matte lipsticks. Like, they're so great for the fall. And that contrast between like a very glowing look and a matte lip, that is a mood in itself. So let me know what you guys think below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. If you're new to the channel, welcome, good to have you. Consider giving this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified every time new content is released. See you guys. Bye.